I'll give you a second to get your notification. In fact, I'm just going to zen it a little. So I've got some music going. Just clear your space as you get on here. It's a Monday. Literally, I've had so much stuff going on. Sometimes it's just good to sit with yourself and feel it. Allow yourself to feel any emotions that you have going on and just align with them and recognize them and bring awareness to that space, because that's how you release them. Otherwise, they become trapped, and we all know they cause all kinds of things. All right, so let me get into this right screen where I can see you. If you're hopping on and you're live, or even if you're on the replay, I love to see where you're from. So in the little chat, you can say hello, depending on which one of my platforms you're hopping on from. Some of you I can see your names, and some of you I can't. So if it just says sometimes Facebook user, so if I don't say hello back to you and use your name, that's just because of the platform that you're coming in on. So I'm going to talk to you about boundaries today. So we're going to look at this if you follow me before, like, I'm into looking at things outside of the box, looking at things different. I don't like to just give you the same thing that everybody else is giving you. So when I talk about boundaries, or when I say boundaries, most people jump to the space of thinking I'm setting a boundary between myself and another person. And that's usually where we go. And in fact, boundaries start with yourself. Like, you can't hold good boundaries around. Hello, beautiful Jan. How are you? You can't set boundaries around other people if you can't figure out this. I call it, it's kind of like a boundary space. It's this space that you have, and I'm going to show you. Ooh, a nice breeze just came through my window. It's so hot in here. So I'm going to show you how to create this space where you recognize yourself and the role that you play in boundaries. And those are based off of things that have happened to you. Okay. So boundaries are not something that you inherit. They're not something that, it's not part of your inherited character. It's part of the character that gets developed in your childhood. So as you do this, I want you to allow yourself to see openly. Thank you, Jan. To see yourself openly in a space where, number one, you've got to be honest with yourself. Anything that you ever do that you're working on yourself, you have to allow yourself to be honest. And I tell you to get into this space where you're honest, but you don't criticize yourself. So let yourself be honest, but then let the criticism go, because that's why we have such a hard time being honest with ourselves, is because when we start into the place where we are being honest, immediately we start being critical. So allow yourself to see, as we go through this process, where we can call them injuries, where your deficits are, where these things have happened to you in your life, whether they're self-induced or they're induced by others. And that's where it's important to be really honest. If you're passing the plate, right, you're blaming everyone else. And I'll give you some examples. So boundaries, as I mentioned, they're not inherited. They're formed in our really critical years where our character is being built. So as we're children, the problem is that adults, and we do this to our own kiddos and those children around us, if you work with kids in any cultural community setting, this is like what we do. We want them to be cooperative, right? We want kids to share. We want children to be compliant. We want them to basically rid themselves of boundaries, right? If I'm a child and I'm in the sandbox and I'm playing with a tractor, and little Scotty wants it and he starts crying, right? What does my mom do? She doesn't want to hear the crying. She doesn't want me to not be nice. So she tells me to give my tractor to Johnny, right? So my mother is teaching me, although she means it in a great way, and there are some benefits to, learning how to share things. In this case, I'm learning how to be cooperative. I'm learning how to be compliant, because then when I do that, not only do I make the other person happy, right, but I also make my mom happy. And ultimately, that's where our deepest desires, our deepest needs come from, is that sense of belonging. So we learn that if we want to make our parents happy, we want to make our teachers happy, we want to make our friends happy, then we get into relationships when we're older. We want to make our spouses happy. We want to please because we want to belong in this relationship. So let me tell you what happens. You learn that if I set limits for myself, then I risk losing a relationship. I'm going to tell you that again because it's really important. And I just want you to like even write it down. Write it down so you can kind of, look at it and think about it on a deeper scale. If I set limits for myself, I risk losing a relationship. And I actually think my kid might be crying. So if he is, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to hop off here. But okay, so if I set limits, I risk losing a relationship, then I don't feel safe anymore. So having boundaries makes me actually feel not safe. Okay. When you think about it though, you're like, ooh, boundaries make me safe. But it's actually your subconscious is looking at it differently because giving in makes me feel safe because then I won't risk losing a relationship. See where that conflict comes in? So boundaries have to start with you. You have to become aware. You have to realize what's actually going on inside your little noggin. So one of the ways that you can do this is you got to start taking responsibility for your own needs because then you stop looking outside for your needs to be met by everyone else. Because if I don't need my needs to be met by everyone else, it really helps me to not get into that space where I need to please people because I need something in return, right? So if I'm taking emotional responsibility for myself, I'm taking emotional accountability for myself, I'm taking in the ability to not be searching for, something to fill my loneliness, right? Then I'm creating this space that I was talking about earlier. So this is what I call this kind of like separation space. So before, I've basically been raised that I need to people please because I need to feel wanted and I don't want to risk losing this relationship. So my needs and other people providing for my needs and even me providing for the needs of other people, it gets kind of all into this like giant little wound up yarn ball. Okay. So the space is kind of pulling those apart where I recognize my own needs and what I can do to fulfill them. I can see the needs of other people and I recognize when I have the ability to help them, but they're not entangled into mine. Okay. So I'm not people pleasing to meet the needs of other people. I'm setting those boundaries for myself. So this space allows you to stop giving, 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 giving. And so you sit with yourself and you say, okay, what do I actually need? What do I actually need? And how can I give that to myself? And then you're going to go into the space of, but I'm lonely, but my parents are doing blah, 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 but my kids are doing blah, blah, blah. Okay, when you give the buts and the excuses, you're automatically basically just being like, here, take my power. You're giving your full power away because you're expecting other people to give you what you need instead of giving it to yourself. So let me give you an example. If I start in a space where I'm like, wow, I feel really lonely right now. If I start searching for that desire of feeling needed, of feeling wanted, of feeling cared for, guess what happens? I get to a space with another person where I'm willing to accept red flags. I'm willing to accept things that I'm compromising on because my need for loneliness is suddenly being met. But at the same time, I might be willing to accept now that I am not with someone that makes me laugh. Okay. So I've given away my power in order to get that loneliness. So when I'm with this person, I'm willing to people please or do what they want because I don't have a boundary because I'm fulfilling my loneliness from them, right? Whereas if I'm fixing my own loneliness and, doing that, however, whatever works for me, like, maybe I'm feeling lonely. I'm going to grab a book and I'm going to grab a chair and I'm going to go out and sit outside and I'm going to read and I'm going to fulfill that space, right? Instead of looking for that outside somewhere else. So that's kind of an example of how that works. So we're shifting our mindset where we have control. We're taking back control. So when we're kids, this is where you kind of go into that place where you're like, I'm going to recognize the awareness of where did I learn to do this? What taught me to be this way? So we give up all this control because we have our parents running around being like, Chloe, get out of bed, get up and get dressed now. Hurry up, you're going to be late for the dentist. Like we have this space where we're like, and if I hurry and do it, and I do what my parent says, or I do what my teacher says, or I do what whoever says, then I feel rewarded. I feel accepted. I feel like I'm fitting into the mold of what my parent wants me to be. So it's really that space where you realize, like, hey, I'm going to do this for myself. I don't need anyone to tell me to get up and get dressed now. I'm fulfilling my own needs myself. So I want you to think about this. Where are you waiting for other people to fulfill your needs? Where are you waiting for other people to give you that space where you start pleasing, you start acting the way that you think that you need to act so that you can be accepted? Because that's the first thing, okay, is bringing that awareness. So I'm telling you, sit with yourself, recognize where your changes from the past are, and align with giving yourself the direction you need. Because then when you are in that space where you understand, like, I'm not going to, let's use another one. I used to be really the type of person that felt guilted into helping other people at my own cost. So let's say that I was flying and I flew for 12 hours and then, I had to come home and take care of my own kids. And I would feel this guilt that I needed to also help the neighbor out because such and such was happening. Okay. And so, right, that's me wanting to be accepted. And that's me not having a boundary for myself when otherwise recognizing that I have a need there too. Like I have to take care of myself first. And I don't need the acknowledgement of another person for me to feel okay about who I am. And that's kind of where we get into that messy space. It's because I feel guilt if I don't do that, because I've been taught in the past that I'm supposed to do service before self always. And I'm not saying that service before self isn't always, there's a place for it. There's a space for service before self, but you can't have your cup an eighth full and do service before self. Okay. If your cup is like 3/4 full, doing some service before self is probably okay. Right. See where I'm going with that? So you have to recognize these boundaries for yourself. Like, where is it okay for me to be able to put down what I'm doing and help someone else? Well, it is okay if I'm really balanced and I've been really taking care of myself, because then my cup is overfilling and I have that ability to give it to somewhere else. So start with your boundaries at your you level. Where am I actually giving away my power? Because what have I been taught as a child where I need to be cooperative and compliant? Because without understanding that first, you're going to set boundaries all day long. And guess what? You're going to bust them. And then you're going to be angry with yourself, and you're going to get into this cycle where you're like, I don't know why I can never say no to anybody. I'm always putting everybody else first. And you just get into this miserable mess. Okay. All right, you guys, there you go. Just as a reminder, blockedemotions.com, I did open my schedule back up. So I am doing phone sessions on a limited basis throughout the week. So you can hop in there and do that. But I also do have my email sessions available as well. And I will see you again next week. Same time, same place. You guys have a beautiful rest of your week. Sending you all the